So we are now within a new generation of Vanguard. Being in G with the new pack system, I'm going to be changing my definition of free-to-play moving forward. I assume you as a player have been saving up gems correctly for your favorite clan or your second favorite clan. With the new box system in mind, that means I assume after you have already pre-crafted all the stuff that you can from the box, as soon as you get the stuff you want, you reset, and then you leave it alone once you get all the stuff you want. No more gems, only using packs just to get the stride material. You leave it alone. This means that I consider a free-to-play deck that you have finished the box at least once, at least with the clan that you are wanting. With this in mind, that doesn't mean free-to-play means day one deck. Free-to-play means at the end of the month, after kind of working throughout it, that you should have been able to go through the box at least once, if not twice.
Hi, editing Charles here. It is very early the next morning after filming. I forgot to make a point that my packs are a little messed up. I did the correct thing. I reset after my first box of pulling all the GRs I wanted. But on the second one, I noticed like, oh wait, I don't have any of the Legion dudes, so I have to pull all of them from this box. And as you can see, I only have one. I missed one. And I just kept pulling and pulling. I was like, I'll get him eventually. And he's just sitting there. It's like that thing of Squidward trying to eat the Krabby Patty, but just eating all the garbage instead.
Now, when looking at our free-to-play Gear Chronicle deck, since you have finished one box, that means you will have at least one GR for your deck, 2 of both of the double rares, and a playset of all the double rares and below. This is going to be different for everybody, depending on when you reset and how devoted you are into maybe a second clan is also in there that you're wanting. I think this is very doable. Now, looking at this deck, it's already kind of breaking the rules. I have 3 Chrono Jets. The reason there's 3 here is because you get one for free just from reaching, I think, grade 3 right now. Now, the whole goal of this deck, with Chrono Jet in mind, is to stride every turn possible. Technically, he has that GB2. When he's attacking, they have to do the whole discard or Sentinels won't activate. It's a cool finish, and it can be used in combination with other cards in the deck that we'll be talking about. I'm mainly going to be thinking of the idea of we're striding every turn to activate his stride ability, which is Counterblast 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and put it to the bottom of their deck. This is not retiring, but it's like a form of popping interceptors for us. This is a cool little counter to Legion since we're not putting stuff in the drop. Currently, I don't know of any meta decks right now that don't care if you send stuff back to the deck because they can get it later. But for now, I'm just treating this as a intercept popping, which allows us to make more swings at the Vanguard each turn. Now, the rest of the trigger lineup, I'm playing, again, 2 of the other double rares, even though I only have 1. It's just a backup ride. You'll never pick him over Chrono Jet, I think. Maybe late game, you top deck it. You are about to deck out, maybe. I've never run into the issue, so I've never needed to Legion. But if you miss Chrono and you're just on him, you're missing a stride, I guess, too. Legioning is a cool ability with him, I guess. We don't really have another good option to play in the grade 3 section. I just chose the Fate Wheel Dragon. This is because he has an on-place ability that allows us to pop stuff in the back row. And technically, if we miss a stride turn, he does also have an ability, which does the whole, like, not being able to guard with Heal Guardians, which we in our deck are playing 4 of, obviously. Every deck should be playing these. Our 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th pseudo PGs. They're amazing. The only downside of them, obviously, is we can't stride with them. That is why we are playing, obviously, 4 of the Steam Breath Dragon, which is stride fodder. It also allows us to make sure that we are hitting our Chrono Jets. Since we were playing 4 of it, that means you have more flexibility in your trigger lineup. I am playing one of the grade 0 crits. I'll talk about him in a second later because he kind of needs more discussion. But with that in mind, I am playing 1 crit, 8 draws, 4 heals. You need the draws in the deck to help us make sure that we are striding consistently and drawing into our pieces to allow us to win. Now, the MVP of the deck is Glimmer Breath Dragon, Generation Break 1, which just means that you just need to have at least one grade 4 face up, whether that is on Vanguard Circle or in the G Zone. When placed, if your Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater Chrono Jet, which if you didn't know, striding takes the name of the heart card, which is your grade 3. So as long as you have Chrono Jet, he's active. And since we are playing at least 3 of him in this deck, I think he will constantly be on. Soul Blast 1, Counter Blast 1, tuck a rear guard. He then gets plus 2k. This means he's now at 11, which can obviously hit Vanguards by himself. Giving us main phase tucking, I think is really important in the deck because as you'll see throughout the build, we are playing other units that care about when cards are tucked. And since Chrono Jet activates during the stride ride phase, that means unless we have preemptively laid cards in the back row, they will not activate. So having a main phase way of doing this is very important. Now, something to point out about Glimmer Breath is he has the Soul Blast 1 attached to him. When I was originally building the deck, I was building it in more of this countercharge heavy build, but an issue I kept running into was Soul. Enough cards in the deck were needing Soul, so I kind of sidestepped into a Soul Charging-esque build. Cards like Maki, on play Soul Charging, is a great ride target. I've never rode her and would then have trouble later with Soul. Just that one additional Soul really makes a lot of difference. Now going back to the Heart Thump Worker, I don't like the grade 0 crits, like at all. Them being a crit that when defensively checked draws you a card, I think is a really cool way that they've made them a little more effective in 0. But the thing with crits is they turn off on hit abilities. And throughout the deck, you'll see there are a couple, especially grade 4s in the deck, that have on hit abilities. They can't be discarded for stride, and since they only draw when defensively checked, that means that's one less card that we could have drawn if we had drive checked it. But after going over some deck lists from the most recent championships, peeps are playing a lot of other soul charging abilities, like Heart Thump Worker. One of or two of is what I was mainly seeing, not a lot of playsets. He has the ability that when your Vanguard attacks, if the heart card was Chrono Jet, then you get to put him in your soul, draw a card. It's the soul charging that I like there. It's an additional card in the soul. With that in mind, that is why I'm only still playing the one of. I think playing 5 grade 0s is the max I want to do right now. Maybe if we have a more consistent way of getting grade 3s in our hand, I'll change that, but for now, 1 copy is cool. Now, a card I wasn't so sure on when I was first playing was Ishin. I originally was just playing her as like a 3 of. I was thinking of dropping her down to a 2 of, mainly because I was just playing her for the resist. Kagero and Gear Chronicle are going to be some of the most prevalent decks that you're going to run into, including Narukami. Well, Narukami does the punchy thing, which resist doesn't do it. But the resist is a very powerful ability to have on its own. I wasn't really paying mind to her other ability, which is the when your opponent's rear guard is tucked, counterblast 1, and she cannot be guarded against by the heal triggers. I didn't really like this because, like I said, it requires kind of more setup. You either have to preemptively lay her in the back row with Chrono Jet, or use her in combination with Glimmer Breath. And on top of all this, you have to counterblast additional. But for that final turn swing, she's really helpful. This is because her and the grade 2 that we used for the Legion both have the thing where they're turning off the heal triggers. This means that your opponent has to use PGs to block them on a final turn push. So when we swing with our giant Vanguard, if all they have left are the heals, they're not going to be able to block. With the whole Soul Blasting thing in mind, I'm still playing 1 GG. I love the GG Soul Blast 2 draw card. She has some cool combo things I'll talk about later. The Soul Blast is heavy, but now that we're playing this more Soul Charge-esque build, she's still good. I don't want to up her though. I still don't want to up her though because using her more than once is not very effective. Same with Meshi. He has the ability that once per turn, if you do the tuck thing, you can Soul Blast 1 and Countercharge 1. I was playing more of him in the Countercharge deck because I didn't think Soul would be an issue. And it's really cool in combination with Chrono Jet because it basically means Soul Blast 1 tuck something. But you would just run out of Soul so quickly, and then you would need it for Glimmer Breath later and just get frustrated. So I ended up knocking him down to 1. I still think he's nice. I just don't want to have more of him. With Countercharging still in the conversation, I think Gear Horse is kind of the best grade 2 I had to cut. He is just a Bellicosity clone on hit, Countercharge 1. I was playing 4. I cut him back to 1. He's the card that I would say put up the most if you're not liking the deck, just because the countercharging is very easy to do with this deck. Now, a card I added in that I was on the fence about but ended up really liking is the 12k attacker on GB1 later. Having this later game 12k attacker is very nice because having this way of attacking without a booster and not use any cost like Glimmer Breath is a very powerful ability. I think playing 2 of him is still healthy because moving on to the grade 4s, our GR that we're playing as a 1 of is Fate Rider. Fate Rider is the only time leap card that Gear Chronicle has access to right now. This is an act ability. I guess that's just how they word this whole can be activated with no cost. Put one of your rear guards at the bottom of your deck and call a card from your deck that is 1 grade higher. So if you put a grade 1 back to the deck, you get to call a grade 2. If you put a grade 2, put a grade 3. Usually I use the ability from the grade 1 to grade 2 because this means we can now turn a grade 1 unit like the GG into a more powerful grade 2 like a Glimmer Breath for a pop if we need it, or something like the Twin Miser for the 12k attack. In a more powerful Gear Chronicle deck, this is like a first ride or second ride. For us, we kind of have to save it. We only have the 1 obviously, and he has this later ability that after you do his time leap, for each face-up card in your G zone, choose one of your units, they get plus 3k. So this means probably the card you're calling out is going to get a big buff. So that means the earlier we use it, the less of a buff it'll get. Sadly, everything else in the G zone is just going to kind of get weaker and weaker from here. I think the next strongest that we have is the Lost Age. He has the on-hit Tucker Rearguard. Since this is an on-hit ability, this means you can't get rid of interceptors. It's just going to be grade 3s or more, probably the back row. With that in mind, there is also the whole Chronos command thing, which is basically the same thing, but it's CB2 Soul Blast 1. So it's using up resources, but it's like a board wipe for your opponent, but it's just going to be back row. So the G zone's very frustrating in this deck, as you're seeing. I'm only playing 2 of the mystery flares. I think you can pump him up to maybe a playset just to meme with him. He can definitely win you and cheese you some games. His whole thing of being able to take an extra turn, I see it happen. I've never got it to work. I've never had a game where I actually had 4 CB available. But if you're playing the whole countercharge engine, he's definitely a way to go. I just chose to use this whole soul charging way just because I think it's the more powerful build, and I think it's going to be the one that's going to be more applicable moving forward rather than the cheesy kind of build. And then I'm playing one of the plus 10k Cray Elemental. I think it's useful. On a turn especially where we have Tuck the only interceptor they have, having a giant Vanguard is going to be helpful, especially if getting past, especially against getting over defensive triggers and heal guardians all stacking on each other. I think it has a good place in the deck. If anything, I want to ride him more than Lost Age and stuff like that. Now for the starter, I'm going with Draco Kid. Getting to have an extra grade 3 for striding or to hit a Chrono Jet that we're missing is very, very useful. I've whiffed a lot with him. I don't know why. I feel like I have a lot of grade 3s in the deck and I'm still whiffing. Now for other budget options, like I said, play more Gear Horses. I think he is a great unit, especially if you're going the more countercharge deck. I really like the Gear Wolf. He is a 10k attacker or 10k booster, and I think this is a very consistent ability, especially because Chrono Jet is in our Vanguard, obviously. Now let's say now, for upgrades, you have been able to reset the box and are now going through a second time. This now means you can now play Ragnarok. Ragnarok says that you have to Counterblast 1 and G Persona Blast. This means you have to have a second copy of him in your G zone, which is why you need to be able to go through a second box to play him. He then turns off your opponent's Heal Guardians. And then if he is your second stride, you then get to gain a crit and tuck a unit. This is meaning that you're going to tuck a back row because he's swinging at Vanguard, hopefully. But this does mean that we now have access to a finisher for Gear Chronicle, in combination with the Ishin and the Grade 2 Legion, them being able to take out the PGs, and then him being able to swing over anything else they might have. With a crit, we finally now have some final game pressure. Outside of that, there's not much to say. You now have access to a second Fate Rider, which is amazing. Yeah, besides that, all that has really changed for the deck is we're now playing our 4th Chrono, and we're playing more of the Legion, but that's just because he's better than the rare guy. And I haven't increased the grade 2 of the Legion, but that's just because I don't want to clog up the grade 2 section because, like I said, we have Glimmer Breath, we have Ishin, like units I'd much rather play, and we're not legioning consistently. Like, he's just here as backup, so playing 4 of him isn't needed. I think the deck is very powerful, even in this free-to-play level. There's not much separating the free-to-play deck from the more full-power deck. The only difference is you having access to Riding Clock. Currently being able to have access to that 3rd Chrono Jet makes this deck very accessible. It being a new clan does mean that you have not saved up your pieces. So if you are having trouble with this, I am sorry that it might be a little bit of a slug to get to them, but I promise you're going to be able to build a deck. It's very accessible. Just remember when building this deck to be smart with your resources. Next, I actually have some gameplay footage for you that I recorded while I got home after training and made a sandwich. So just a precursor, I guess I should say, that the actual gameplay footage from when I was making the sandwich got corrupted. So I had to last minute get another game, but I thought the footage was too funny not to use. So I'm able to get my ideal ride, which is the soul charger. So now I'll kind of be set for the rest of the game when it comes to soul. As you're noticing, I do not have a grade 3 in my hand. I am waiting until turn 2 to decide if I want to call out the Steam Breath to then go search for a Chrono Jet. I also have the starter, which is going to be a nice little backup to make sure I get to him. Luckily with this defensive trigger, I am able to get to my Chrono Jet Dragon. So now I can hold on to the Steam Breath for the stride. Sometimes the grade 3 searchers whiff. This is how it goes. He does go to the soul, so I'm getting more soul charge. My opponent is playing, obviously, brawlers. So how I'm going about this game is, from this turn forward, I'm going to be very careful on what units I place down. I don't want to overcommit to the board just for him to punch them out and me not be able to make a comeback. So I'm going to kind of know that I can play the slow game and outvalue him, hopefully. I luckily hit the defensive trigger, which means his rear guard is now not going to be able to hit me, keeping me at 2. Oh, kitty, stay out of that light. Oh, I love this Chrono Jet animation. Now, striding here is a little weird. I have to decide on what I want to be getting rid of. I think I am going to decide to go up to the Lost Age. This way I can get rid of both of his boosters with Chrono Jet and the Lost Age on hit. So we're going to use Chrono Jet. We're going to get rid of the filter unit. Like I said, I'm going to be kind of holding back when it comes to placing units. So I'm just going to be laying the Twin Miser just to be able to get the 2 hits this turn. No triggers, and if anything, I'm happy for that, because if the critical trigger had came up and he had PG'd it, I would have been a little upset. But we were able to get rid of his other booster, so that's 2 cards down for him, and we are not committing too much. I don't really know why he called on top of the grade 3 unit. He already had 4 cards in his drop. I think it's just to add another trigger back to his deck. So now when he swings with his Vanguard, he's only going to be hitting 2 units, so his unit is only going to be boosted by, I think, 10k. He does hit the draw, so that means his rear guard's going up another 5k. So I think that means it's going up to 24, which means no matter what, I'm going to 4 damage this turn. So again, I want to stride. And I don't really know how I want to go about this. I'm not going to try to push myself to get another Lost Age hit. So I'm just kind of riding the Mystery Flare, just because nothing else is really going to work for me here. I am lucky with the Twin Miser, so now So my idea here is just to kind of pressure him and get rid of as many PGs out of his hand as I can now. I would have liked for my horse to hit the Vanguard, obviously, for the counter charge, but then I would have had to commit a booster, and then he would have been hitting 3 times for no additional cost, and I just didn't want to waste units at this time, especially when I know I have a PG and 2 Heal Guardians. So we're able to get rid of one of the PGs, which for future turns is going to be very useful, especially now that we have that Ishin in our hand. He is going for the cross ride, which means he is now going to have a bigger butt, which is going to be a little harder for us. He is able to Legion. Giving him the 1 CB, I don't think was a huge detriment to me, especially knowing how small his hand size was. He does get the Rising Phoenix off, so he is getting additional drawing. But since he has only committed 1 Interceptor, I'm going to feel really confident about our next turn. So here we are going to 5. All of his units are getting boosted. So they're both within hitting range, but luckily, again, 2 Heal Guardians. Heal Guardians are just giving us more defensive plays and being able to kind of play these longer games that we need to against in a more aggressive deck like Brawlers. So here, I'm having to decide on, do I try to survive another turn with something like Fate Rider, or am I going to go Pressure? I'm going to go with the Pressure. I'm going to go with the Cray Elemental for the bigger butt. I want to be able to guarantee that is going to be able to hit this turn. Yep, so we're going to get rid of that 1 Interceptor he has left. I'm then deciding how I want to get rid of that last Interceptor. Do I use Chrono Jet? I'm going to decide that with Ishin in my hand, it's going to be smarter to not use Chrono Jet here, place the Ishin, and then use Glimmer Breath's Counter Blast to tuck the Interceptor. It is going to use an additional Soul Charge compared to just Chrono Jet, but he is now going to go up to 11k, which is going to be able to hit his Vanguard because he Soul Blasted out his Cross Ride. We're going to use our last Counter Blast to get Ishin the Heal Trigger Nullify ability. I now have to decide on what to do with considering his hand. If I swing with the Ishin and they have only PGs in the hand, it's not going to work out very well for me. So I decided to swing with the Glimmer Breath first to just get rid of any possible Heal Guardians or PGs they have. It shows that he did have at least 1 Heal Guardian, so he may have had a second. I swing with the Ishin. No heals. As you see, I do get a rank up, which is very nice. I have a 10-game win streak, 7 of which is with this Chrono Jet build. I'm very excited about it. Okay, and back to the normal video, I guess. I hope everything was of help to you. I hope I was able to give you resources to have a better understanding of how to finish the deck, how to go about the deck. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or DM me directly on Twitter. If you'd like to support me, hit me up on Triple Rare. How many do I have? Less than 10. I know I have less than 10 Mysterious Man playmats. I think that's it. I never know how to end these. That's all I got.